how the US is using crypto and gold to erase $37 trillion. The United States owes $37 trillion, a number so large it no longer behaves like debt. It behaves like a gravitational force, bending every policy decision in Washington around its weight. And here is the part almost no one understands. The US government is not planning to repay this money. They are planning to delete it without ever declaring default, without voting on austerity, without raising taxes to unbearable levels. They will do it the same way collapsing empires have quietly rescued themselves for centuries, by destroying the value of the currency in which the debt is denominated. Not in one dramatic crash, but through a slow, strategic, engineered evaporation of purchasing power. And the instruments they are using are the last ones anyone expected. Crypto and gold assets, most people believe, stand outside government control. In reality, these assets are becoming the core mechanism of what may be the most sophisticated debt erasure operation in modern history. A monetary reset disguised as innovation, a currency devaluation presented as financial modernization, a transfer of wealth so quiet that millions will not notice until their savings buy half as much as they did the year before. Because when the government revalues Bitcoin and gold upward, it is simultaneously revaluing the dollar downward. What looks like a surge in the price of hard assets is actually the dollar sinking beneath them. And most Americans holding dollars, wages, pensions, savings are unknowingly standing on that sinking ship. This is not conspiracy. This is precedent. It has happened before. 1933, 1949, 1971. Every time debt becomes mathematically unpayable, governments do not pay the bill. They rewrite the rules of money itself. Today, that rewrite has already begun. Before we go deeper, we need to understand one critical truth. Government debt does not behave like household debt. Households must earn, save, cut, sacrifice. Governments can simply redefine the value of the unit in which their debts are measured. This power, the power to change what a dollar means, has been used repeatedly across history. And now, with $37 trillion on the line, the United States is preparing to use it again. How governments make debt disappear. To see what is being built today, you have to rewind almost a century. In the early 1930s, the United States was suffocating under the combined weight of World War I obligations and the Great Depression. Debt to GDP was climbing toward 40%. Banks were failing, prices were falling, and deflation was turning every dollar of debt into a heavier chain. Back then, the dollar was not just a symbol. It was defined as a fixed amount of gold. For decades, 1 ounce of gold officially equaled $20.67. Your paper dollars were literally claims on physical gold in a vault. This was the classic gold standard, and it created a hard boundary. The government could not simply print unlimited dollars without worrying about its gold reserve. But by 1933, that boundary became a cage. The government could not pay its debts at the existing gold price. So President Franklin D. Roosevelt did something that would shape every monetary crisis playbook that followed. First, he attacked ownership. Through Executive Order 6102, Americans were forced to hand over their gold to the government at the official price, $20.67 per ounce. Private hoarding of gold became illegal. Most citizens complied. They traded real metal for paper promises. Then came the twist. Once the gold was safely consolidated in government vaults, the official price was redefined. In 1934, the US revalued gold to $35 per ounce, a jump of about 69% overnight. On paper, nothing physical had changed. The same bars of gold still sat in the same vaults. But their accounting value exploded. Government gold reserves went from being worth roughly $4 billion to nearly $7 billion, creating several $billion of value simply by changing the number attached to an ounce of gold. Debt, however, was denominated in dollars, not in ounces of gold. As gold went up, the real value of the dollar fell. Inflation followed. Over the next years, the burden of debt relative to the economy shrank, while the purchasing power of citizens quietly eroded. The pattern was clear: confiscate or control the hard asset, revalue it higher, let inflation do the dirty work of erasing debt at the expense of savers. It was not called theft, it was called policy. And that same blueprint is now being redrawn, this time with Bitcoin and gold at the center. Crypto, gold, and the new playbook. Fast forward to today. The US government now sits on $37 trillion of debt. Debt to GDP is around 132%, a level previously seen only during total war. The annual interest bill alone is over $1.2 trillion, rivaling or exceeding defense and Medicare. If interest rates stay elevated, that bill could climb toward $1.8 trillion, around 6% of GDP, just to stand still, no principal paid down. This is not a political talking point. It is simple arithmetic. You cannot tax your way out of this. You cannot grow your way out when debt outpaces the economy. You cannot cut enough spending when interest itself eats the budget. The only remaining lever is the same one used in 1933, devaluation. But they cannot just fire up the printing press in full view of everyone. Open, obvious inflation would shatter confidence in the dollar. They need something more sophisticated, something that looks like innovation, leadership, financial modernization, not like a stealth default. Enter Bitcoin and gold. On the 23rd of January 2025, a new executive order establishes a strategic Bitcoin reserve, framing it as a way to secure American leadership in digital assets and protect innovation. On the surface, it is about tech. Underneath, it is about balance sheets. The US government already controls a significant pile of seized Bitcoin tens or even hundreds of thousands of coins from Silk Road, hacks, ransomware, and enforcement actions. Officially, that trove might be worth tens of billions at current prices. But that is not enough to move a $37 trillion problem. So the plan, according to proposals like the Bitcoin accumulation bills in Congress, is to quietly scale this up through seizures, fines, settlements, even mining with government-linked energy. Not loudly buying on exchanges, but slowly absorbing supply. Then comes the familiar move from 1934, revaluation. Imagine a future announcement. The US declares that, for official reserve and balance sheet purposes, it values its strategic Bitcoin holdings at $1 million per coin, far above current market prices. On paper, a million coins become $1 trillion in reserves almost overnight. Simultaneously, they look at gold. The US officially holds over 8,000 tons of gold, roughly 261 million ounces. At today's market price, that's hundreds of billions of dollars. But on the government's books, because of an old statutory price from the 1972, that gold is still valued at roughly $42 per ounce, a tiny fraction of market value. This accounting quirk leaves massive room for a second revaluation. If, in a crisis, the US updates its gold price to, say, $20,000 per ounce for reserve purposes, those same bars suddenly represent more than $5 trillion on the balance sheet. Combine $1 trillion from Bitcoin and over $5 trillion from gold, and you have roughly $6 trillion in new asset value created not by mining, not by production, but by changing the official price of assets the government already owns. On paper, the state looks stronger, debt ratios improve, solvency metrics heal. In reality, the unit in which your salary, savings, and bonds are denominated has been violently cheapened. The numbers go up, your purchasing power goes down. Modern parallel. Global reset. Winners and losers. If this were just a US trick, it would still be dangerous. But the pattern is global. Across the world, central banks have been quietly buying gold at the fastest pace in decades. Countries in the BRICS bloc, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, have openly discussed creating alternative payment systems and even gold-linked currencies to reduce their dependence on the dollar. China and Russia have accumulated massive gold reserves and are experimenting with state-linked crypto and digital infrastructure. Every major power is staring at the same problem. Fiat debt has grown faster than real productivity. The only politically survivable solution is the same one: inflate it away. What makes the US unique is its ability to set the tone. If Washington revalues gold and Bitcoin upward for its reserves, global markets do not ignore that signal. Gold is a global asset. If the largest holder declares a new reference price and backs it with policy, other nations either follow or risk being stranded with underpriced reserves. The effect cascades. Gold and Bitcoin surge in nominal dollar terms. Other hard assets, real estate, commodities, energy follow. The dollar, measured against anything real, collapses in purchasing power. On the surface, this can be sold as returning to sound money, partially backing the dollar with gold, embracing digital reserves. It sounds conservative, even responsible. In reality, it is a controlled demolition of the currency's value in order to save the state. History has variations of this script. Weimar Germany printing to escape reparations. Argentina repeatedly devaluing the peso. Zimbabwe and Venezuela inflating away obligations while citizens carted banknotes in bags and wheelbarrows. The US will not look like Zimbabwe. It will look cleaner, more technical, more law-bound. There will be no wheelbarrows in the streets, only bank statements and apps quietly updating numbers that buy less each month. So who wins? The government, which sees its real debt burden shrink without admitting default. Politicians and central bankers who avoid the pain of deep spending cuts or tax revolts. Early holders of gold and Bitcoin who see nominal prices explode. Owners of productive assets, land, energy, strong businesses whose value rises with inflation. Foreign states with big gold reserves whose balance sheets also magically improve. And who loses? The middle class, whose savings accounts and pensions are denominated in a currency being hollowed out. Bondholders, especially pension funds and retirees, repaid in devalued dollars. Wage earners, whose pay lags far behind the rapid rise in living costs. Small businesses squeezed between soaring input costs and customers who can no longer pay. The American dream was priced in dollars. When those dollars change meaning, the dream does too. This is not labeled a default. It is marketed as reset, stabilization, modernization. But the outcome rhymes with every historical devaluation. The system survives, the currency does not, and savers pay the price. Outro, what awaits? And what you can still choose. Now we arrive at the uncomfortable question. If this is the path, what can an individual actually do? You cannot veto executive orders. You cannot vote down balance sheet revaluations. You cannot stop the quiet coordination of central banks and ministries. But you can decide which side of the trade you stand on when the reset hits. The logic of the strategy is brutal but simple. Debts are in dollars. Dollars will be cheapened. Hard assets will be repriced higher to repair government balance sheets. If you sit entirely in dollars cash, long-term bonds, fixed pensions, you are volunteering to be the fuel that makes the reset work. The original script lays out a survival map. Rotate out of long-term dollar debt instruments. Reduce idle cash to operating needs. Increase exposure to hard assets, gold, Bitcoin if you understand it, productive real estate, critical commodities. Diversify some wealth outside the most aggressive devaluing jurisdictions. And, crucially, invest in skills and relationships that hold value even when currency units are unstable. These are not magic tricks. They do not guarantee profit, but they shift you away from being the passive counterparty to a planned devaluation. There is also a moral dimension the system will not discuss. Erasing trillions of public debt by dissolving private purchasing power is, at its core, a transfer of wealth from the many to the few. It is legal because the rules of money are written by those who benefit from them. It is normalized because the story will be wrapped in words like stability, security, leadership, and sound money. But legality and morality are not the same. You do not have the luxury of deciding whether this reset should happen. The math has already made that decision. You only decide whether you enter it blind or prepared. Over the next few years, as executive orders quietly expand, as bills about strategic reserves and digital leadership move through committees, as central banks accumulate more gold and experiment with digital currencies, you will see headlines that look technical, even boring. Behind them is a single cinematic truth. The United States is preparing to use crypto and gold to erase an unpayable $37 trillion debt by sacrificing the value of the very dollars you work for, save, and trust. In every crisis, there is a moment when denial is no longer possible, when prices move, when benefits shrink, when the cost of living suddenly outruns the story you were told. You can wait for that moment and experience it as shock. Or you can recognize the pattern now and position yourself on the side of tangible value. The reset is not an event on a single day. It is a process already in motion. Every central bank gold purchase, every digital currency initiative, every new strategic reserve narrative is another frame in the same story. When the credits roll, some will look back and say, "It came out of nowhere." It didn't. It was written in the numbers all along.